Okay, we. Good.
Hi, my name is Mark Monlitz. I'm a freelance illustrator in Tacoma, Washington. You can see my stuff at markmonlux.com. That's MERKMONLUX. Some of the web comics I do are The Comic Critic, which is a compilation of cartoon movie reviews, and The Return of Stickman, which is basically stick figures. And with us today is Bill and Ian.
Hi, I'm Bill Morse. I'm a cartoonist and illustrator in Seattle, Washington. On my spare time, I also do a webcomic called Rhapsodies at wpmorse.rhapsodies.com.
And my name's Ian Castrita. I'm an illustrator, comic artist, and graphic designer working out of Tempe, Arizona. You can check out all my stuff over at unfedartist.com. What's cooking, guys? How you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty well, other than trying to get rid of a cough that has been stubborn as heck, even though I've been drowning it in tea for the entire weekend. Aside from the probably coughing jugs you'll hear from me about every 15 minutes, is actually a lot better than it has been, but it's at the very annoying stage.
I haven't heard you cough yet, so. What about you, Mark?
Let's see. I'm going to be working on. I'm doing pretty good. I just got off the horn a little while ago with one of my clients on the East Coast, and they want this project to them by the time they get in their offices on Monday. So I'm trying to get it done tonight. So I won't be able to share it on the screen because of NDA. But I'm glad that you and Bill will be drawing stuff on the screen.
Yeah, speaking of which, I'm just continuing my my Legend of Zelda fan art that I've been working on for the past few sessions of Epic Sketch Time.
Yeah, I'm currently working on the monthly character design challenge that's every month, which I very much recommend. And this month's topic was punks. So at the moment, I'm working on something that's kind of loosely based on Vivian from Young Ones. And so far, he's looking pretty good.
Bill, what was the name of that group that does that challenge? It's an online thing, right?
Yes, it is. Let me get the. It's really. Sorry, let me find. Well, come on. It is. Yeah, it's a character design reference, but they also do the challenge, and so they have a. So,
is that the name of the group, Character Design Reference?
Yeah, that's their Pinterest page. Let me see the other. So their Facebook page is Character Design Reference, but they also do on the side do the character design, and they're really, really, really useful resources. For me, it's virtually the main reason for having a Pinterest account, because they have this utter encyclopedia of visual references on their Pinterest account. And as I said, every month they do the character design challenge. And considering the level of talent that they have going in there, it's really exhilarating to try and keep up with the big boys.
What was your character design last month?
Last month it was the theme was a robot, but I completely froze on that one. But the last one I did was a tarot card figure, which was, here, let me find it.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, for everybody who's tarot. For everybody who's interested, it's this one here, which I thought came out very nicely, though it took me forever to do all the sunflowers. But otherwise, it was a welcome addition to my portfolio.
Bill, you do the Inktober thing in October, right?
Yes, I do. I've been sort of trying to encourage people to join in. This month I'm sort of using while technically, yes, I'm doing Inktober, I'm using the Drawloween lists. So I'm technically...
I think that unless you're using the Drawloween list, I mean, unless you're using the Inktober list, you're not doing Inktober, you're doing Drawloween.
Inktober just has a number of suggestions. I haven't seen an official list. It's pretty much Inktober is do whatever you want as long as...
I don't know, Bill. I would have... I'd throw contention against that.
I've seen at least 5 lists for this year alone. It's more suggestions.
Now,
is there an official site or anything, or is it
there is an official site. If you type in Inktober, it'll take you to the blog, and there's a list.
Oh, okay. Well, one of the artists I follow, Jake Parker, he created his own Inktober list and he put it on his Facebook fan page, and so I kind of got the feeling that it was just like, as long as you're doing something a day, that was it. Like, you didn't necessarily have to do the entire or do an official list or something. But
yeah, I mean, I always do Inktober, and then out of masochism, I'll inflict another one on myself later in the year, and which has various different themes. Let's see, last year, what did I do last year? Oh, yeah, last year I did Grimm Fairy Tales. The year before that I did nursery rhymes. And the year before that I did movies. This year I have a list for Batman characters, but I'm still thinking about that one.
That'd be an interesting. So 31 days of Batman characters.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if it was Dick Tracy, he'd be able to do it, no problem.
I know there are some pretty obscure Batman characters.
Oh, extremely so. It's not a matter of finding enough characters. It's finding enough characters that are iconic enough for everybody to know about them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're in the company of the artist who does obscure movie monsters, so obscurity isn't a bad thing.
Right. But I'm sort of at the moment, what I'm sort of thinking about with it isn't so much the characters, but what my sort of hypothesis for my thesis for the angle of it will be. I mean, because I kind of did film noir for the Grimm Fairy Tales, so even though film noir is very appropriate for Batman, I'm not sure if I want to repeat myself.
Is it good to have like a theme for the entire month? I mean,
I find it a good way to sort of points you in the right direction. Maybe that's just me, but that's how I've been doing it for the most. Well, I didn't do it for the nursery rhymes technically, though. I tried to, though most of it was done in I was trying to do most of it kind of in the period that most of these things were written, which was, I believe, Georgian or sometime in the Regency.
Doing either Inktober or Drawloween's always a lot of fun. I've done it several years now. Last year I did the Drawloween, and the year before that I did the Inktober list.
Do either of you guys get like any business out of it, like sell it on like stock art or anything, or is it just kind of like a fun exercise?
Not yet, though. I found that I've gotten a lot of a lot of my better, for better or for worse, some of my better recent portfolio pieces were recycled sketches from it.
Huh.
and it definitely has gotten me more. I think, as far as long-term investment, it's definitely made me more visible on social media. I definitely got a lot of likes on Instagram out of it last year.
Well, that's pretty valuable. I confess I have never done it. I've known about it, but it's always just been one of those things that it's like, yeah, I got other things to do. So
I find it a useful challenge because it's sort of a case of where it's forcing you to be creative without relying creative on if this makes any sense, creative in a pinch and not relying on inspiration. And so essentially generally when I'm doing it, I try to make it as random as possible. For the previous challenges, I generally was pulling the sketch from a hat. So it's was a case of, oh, the muse inspired you to draw this image. Too bad the Tupperware told you to draw this. And so then thinking of how to do that in 15 minutes and then try to execute it in another 20 minutes. And also the other important part of the challenge is being forced to own the image when you realize it wasn't as good an idea as you thought it was halfway through, and try to force it to be at least mediocre when you finish.
Now, are there rules like that? Like you have to do it within 30 minutes or so, or
this is the challenges this is the rules I give myself.
Oh, okay. So you make it harder on yourself.
No, as far as Inktober goes, it's all you do is there's no rules of how long you take on any of the projects. But yeah, it's something Bill and I have been doing. Like, I don't give myself any longer than half an hour to do any of them because I got a living to make. So so if you can spend half an hour of your day, doing a little quick sketch, that's a fairly good compromise. It also makes you, speed up. You realize very quickly how much you rely on stereotype imagery that's inside your head, and so as you go throughout the month, you realize that the first idea that pops in your head is often discarded because you're realizing, oh my God, there's going to be 1,600 of those being drawn. I can come up with something a little bit better than that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly have no reason not to participate this year. I guess I'll have to dig in a little bit and just check out the site and all that stuff.
Yeah, decide which one you want to do.
Yeah. So what's Drawloween, and how does it differ from Inktober?
Inktober is specifically a pen and ink exercise where you're encouraged to use inks as a medium as opposed to, say, pencils or paint or the web. Is the tactile capabilities of what pen and ink can do together. At least that's kind of where it goes. I think there's no specific rules about that. I just know that Drawloween is more, hey, you can have something other than ink.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I've been enjoying the challenge of limiting myself to 0.10 markers.
It's been a while since I busted out the India ink and the Crow Quill pen tip, but that would be kind of fun to jump back into that. Like ever since computer and my Wacom, I've just I'm sure my ink's dried up by now.
Hold it against you if you use your Wacom ink control instead, but one of the reasons I started doing it was I just gotten a Pentel brush tip, and I was telling myself I'm only going to use this for this challenge. And I wonder if I've got some Inktober drawings around here. I didn't keep them in a book. I had them loose leaf last time.
Yeah.
I should have kept them in a sketchbook.
Now, is there like everybody's just posting them on Instagram and like?
If you go to Inktober, they give you some. They'll tell you which hashtags to use, and people post them on Instagram. They post them on Twitter. They post them on Facebook.
Okay.
Most of the ones that I follow, I tend to follow on Twitter because I'm more of a Twitter guy. But Instagram tends to have the largest amount of feedback and exposure.
Yeah, I would imagine Instagram is probably the place to do it. And it's easy enough to copy post over from Twitter or from Instagram to Twitter. So.
Oh, it's really especially since Instagram pretty much allows you to do sort of mirror posts with Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have no choice. I must ink.
You must succumb to the peer pressure.
One of us.
It's like I'm in high school again. Thanks, guys.
We're here for you, dude.
So, Mark, you and I are doing a webinar in October.
That's right.
For the Guild, and I'm not sure what we're supposed to discuss except potential presentations. I'm guessing, like I said in my email, this isn't your first rodeo. So, is there any special advice, any Obi-Wan wisdom you can pass?
What they'll want from us is they're going to want a bit of a slideshow. You gotta give them images to look at. Just talking on the air is not going to cut it. So it's a fairly good idea to have an outline of of the topics you want to cover about how to make a living as a cartoonist. It's basically what everyone's coming on for. They want to know how to make a living as a cartoonist.
Yeah.
How I make a living as a cartoonist is not. People don't even know about it. So I'll be talking about graphic facilitation and whiteboarding, and I'll touch on briefly how I used to do editorial stuff, but for the most part, this other work is my main bread and butter stuff.
And that's your oh man, the storyboard stuff that you've been showing.
Yeah, I'm going to say, okay, let's go, I'm going to start by saying, look at the practicalities of what can be done with storyboards. This is what agencies can understand. If you say that you do storyboards, they can go with it. If you can say that storyboards can then be a concept tool, and once the businesses start realizing how they can implement you in creating storyboards, everything from photo shoots to sketchnoting to graphic recording, and I'm going to be showing examples of that. And I'm going to do about 20 minutes of that.
Okay.
So you should orientate your discussion to be about 20 minutes.
Well, they told me 15.
Yeah. Oh, they're trying to keep it underneath an hour this time, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, if we could do 15 and tell people, and the hard thing is not to take questions. Say the last half of this thing is going to be questions and answers, and we'll answer your, do it then. Because they're going to start trying to bombard you and say, just put the pen, put the questions in the chat, because it's just going to be you, me, and another person talking. Everybody else will be posting their comments in the chat, and there will be a listening audience.
Now I've seen a few guild webinars so far, and sometimes like the moderator will stop you midway, but and say, oh hey, we have a question, but
well, yeah, that's Lara, and
like you need to kind of just say, hey everybody, you gotta wait.
Yeah, I tell Lara, just wait until the question is. I know that's pertinent to what I'm talking about now, but I'm not going to, you're disrupting my flow.
Yeah.
Because yeah, she really wants to get into the question. She has a habit sometimes of jumping the gun on that, but that's okay. And that's why I say, just say, let's wait till the end. If you're comfortable in taking a question, but no, it really does disrupt your flow.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
And if I can see what you're going to be doing, and if I would suggest that we run our PowerPoints so that you can at least have an idea what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm going to be talking about, so you can give some thought over what you're going to be talking about, and that way, when the question and answers come up, we can discuss, okay, I think you should cover this one, or we can see who the questions are going to be directed to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we have a dry run or something like the week before or something, right? Like well, that's what I remember from Paula's email. But I mean, is a dry run just like we straight up give the presentation, or is it just like a quick 15-minute skip through it and just kind of touch the bases?
The dry run is more. They do look at the stuff that you sent. That's sort of like a deadline of the panels. It's to give them an idea that we've had a discussion and are talking together. But more than that, it's to make sure you and I and our equipment is running effectively.
Oh, okay.
To make sure that the technology. So it won't. It can be a very short dry run. It can be as short as 15 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, I'll totally try to make sure you have a copy of my presentation and in advance of that, and that way, if there is any overlap, I can cut it out of mine. But I have a feeling that your business is pretty different from what I do. Although I would love to do some of the stuff you do, because it does sound interesting. But I think what I've done so far is definitely something that is different enough that I can talk about for 15 minutes, and hopefully enough people get a wide variety of the possibilities for comics out there.
Yeah, because comics in the more traditional sense, I haven't done any, So.
Well, I went to a small business forum last week or the week before, and I was reminded that, and I'll probably talk about this during my presentation, when it comes to comics and business, it seems like everybody immediately thinks like superheroes, and that they want to show their business as like a Superman kind of.
Oh my God! Yeah, I got an excellent example of that.
And it's so frustrating to kind of let them know, that's not the only possibility, but that's all they think. They think superheroes. They think capes and latex, and that's it. It's like there's so much more that you could do with comics, but yeah, I had a potential lead saying, oh yeah, we've been wanting to do this 6-page comic, and here's this advertisement that we recently did, and sure enough, it was just like them as Superman, and I was just like, oh, well, take a look at my artwork, tell me if you like it, and maybe if I'm a good fit for what you're imagining. I knew I wasn't, but it's not that I can't do superhero stuff. It's just that it's not my regular wheelhouse.
Yeah, I tell people that I'm not, as far as think indie comic as opposed to traditional, think more R. Crumb than, Guy in Tights, or then if they go, well, who's R. Crumb? I said, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Not that I bring myself to R. Crumb, but
I think I'd probably compare myself to to Scott McCloud, and I'm sure barely anybody who isn't in comics would know who that is. So it's an uphill battle, but I think that's part of what, I could put into my presentation. Like, well, this is kind of what you need to discuss with them, and how you approach it and all that stuff. So. Mark, I never asked you, but how did you get started in comics?
Oh, you mean drawing cartoons, or?
Yeah, I mean, were you hoping to be a Superman artist one day, and it just turned into something else, or?
Actually, being a cartoonist was very low on my priorities. What I really wanted, and what my focus at the time, was to be a graphic artist. And later that came to mean, I realized after I became a graphic artist that I didn't like being a graphic artist, because here I was an art director, worked my way up in an agency to the role of art director, was being treated terribly. And I absolutely hated doing design. Design requires so much in the way of revisions. And I realized I hated doing revisions. And so I changed my tactic from being a designer to being an illustrator. Also, being an illustrator made more sense because I found that the illustration projects I was taking on were putting off more than design work, because the turnaround was weird. The turnaround was weird. Now, part of that was I was working on a project. Bill, do you have the sound turned up high?
I didn't think I did. Is that better?
Let me see. Am I echoing? Yeah, that's better. I'm not echoing as much. And
I like how you immediately assumed it was Bill. Never mind though. Go ahead, continue.
What? Well, Ian, do you have the sound turned up?
No, I didn't. It was a very sitcom moment. You're like, Bill.
In all due fairness, it's happened before. I'll just say. But and then once I started doing illustration work, it actually took me a long time to realize. My wife had always been saying, "Why don't you go back to cartooning? Why don't you just do cartooning as your main thing? It seems like all your good projects you've had have been cartooning projects," and I didn't think cartooning sold. But on the other hand, I hadn't pushed it. So once I started just cartooning, a whole slew, I started calling myself a cartoonist rather than an illustrator. And a whole slew of projects really opened up to me.
Yeah, I find that when I'm in front of an audience of business people, and I kind of pitch my main thesis of, like, the practicality of comics and how they're great for communicating ideas and everything, there's never a lack of interest. People are always like excited to talk to me, and they want to find out more. I haven't generated that into I've only generated it into a few, like, paying clients so far, and I guess that's just business. But yeah, I mean, nobody is scoffing at it or anything like that, and that was my concern when I started, was like, that stigma that comics are childish and that they're just for kids and stuff like that. I mean, if anything, people have been excited, but unfortunately, it's like I said, that they always immediately think, oh, superhero, and know, getting past that's kind of been an interesting kind of challenge.
You're coming across just a little garbled, Ian. Are you?
Oh, am I?
Yeah. How far away is your microphone?
It might be the fan. Here, let me see. Is that helping?
Well, you have to go on a rant before I can really tell.
Oh, okay. Well, 7 years ago.
Yeah, that helped.
Okay, there we go. What about you, Bill? How did comics happen?
It's the usual story of drawing as soon as before I could walk stuff, and I'd always loved illustration. For me, but I always liked telling stories as well as writing, as drawing, and what really was the light bulb for me was there was this biography of that autobiography of Charles Schulz, one of those combination biographies and introduction to the strip books. Definite. But the best thing about it was that in the last chapter of it was a pretty much in-depth how I do it page of him showing how he did his strips, and that was sort of just a light bulb went off for me of how cartooning was essentially the combination of storytelling and drawing. And so based on that, even though I do love my superheroes and other parts of the genre, I've always been more into the strips more than I was into comic book pages, at least at first. At the very least, even though I definitely wanted to get into comic books, I was never had the fallacy of it was just the genre of superheroes. Because as I was aware of that, I was very much aware of a lot of the European stuff and a lot of the EC detective comics and all that as well. And plus, as far as illustration, I've always been a fan of the greats, the Wyeths, Arthur Rackham, and whatnot, which was a bit of a stumbling point between when I was in art school, because essentially illustration was sort of the bastard stepchild between the graphics department and the fine arts department, of which I didn't quite fit into either of them. Admittedly, I probably, if I knew what was good for me, I would have gone into graphics, because the graphics at least didn't cop an attitude about it.
Yeah, I was also when it came to university, I was like, I want to be an illustrator, and ASU doesn't even have an illustration program, so I was trained as a fine artist, you know, drawing and painting. But I do remember, like, for me, Norman Rockwell was, like, you know, my hero, you know, the illustrator I wanted to emulate. And I remember reading, like, people arguing whether or not he was actually an artist or not. And is this like, are you serious? Like that.
I was remembering seeing a similar editorial about Andrew Wyeth. And I'm going, what the bleep are you talking about? Of course,
yeah.
It's
so shocking to me, but yeah, people discuss that, and for me, it's like, oh, he's like one of the best artists, but you know, people really take offense to even that mindset. So
yeah, I was getting that all the time with in both college and all the various art programs. I mean, I remember when I first saw that article that was in my art class, and I was going on this rant about it, and pretty much I was getting from my painting teacher going, "Shut up, Bill."
Yeah, it's a weird profession. especially when art in itself is like the butt of so many jokes, you know, the one that always annoys me is like the engineer asks how, the philosopher asks why, and the art major asks, do you want fries with that? And it's like even within art, there's like, you know, the black or what do they call that? The black sheep, right?
Right.
And it's like it's bad enough that, you know, you're already on the team that gets made fun of, but already you're like, you know, you're on the bench for some reason because you chose to be an illustrator.
Mm-hmm. It's either they think you're a sellout or don't think you're committed enough.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll prove them all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the book that I have, I still have it. Have you guys ever come across How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way?
Oh yeah, I mean, jokes aside, it's a fairly good starting off point. I mean, I wouldn't swear, I don't recommend taking it as gospel, but it's probably one of the better. It does a fairly solid job of teaching basics like basic anatomy, foreshortening, perspective, and some page composition, even though they're not particularly creative with it.
Yeah, so I was, gosh, I think I was maybe 10 or 12 or so when I got that book. And that was just, you know, something that, like, I open it up and I see like my scribbles and my notes next to it and everything. And I remember giving it to my mom to tell her what supplies I needed, because it tells you like all the you know, all the erasers and everything that you need to draw comics.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much the.
It was the first basic text I could find before I was able to graduate to Eisner.
And I didn't even really know about Eisner until college. When I started finding out about Scott McCloud, you know, and just like, because he was a student of Eisner, but it was, yeah, I mean, just like the whole world of comics, like it was hard to even find out stuff about it, except, you know, whatever you could find on the rack of the convenience store, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'd found a few others over the years, but even so, once you get past the, hey, kids, you want to draw comics books, the really useful texts I can still count on one hand. I probably own almost all of the ones in English. I'm sure there's a few that I've never heard of in French and Japanese, but...
I'm trying to think of the first time I came across the Comic Critic, Mark. I know I've seen it before I met you. Like,
really?
Yeah, I think I saw it in the New Times or something over here in Phoenix. But I was so jealous when I saw that. I was like, oh, what a job! Watch movies and draw comics about it.
Hang on a moment. This is going to be a treat for you. Congratulations and salutations. You reached Mark Mullins from Homix Illustrations, Homix Reader Mind, also home resident, Krista Bronx, mother to Mark, speaking to you on a grand and glorious Monday afternoon. What can I do to help you with my wonderful skills and talents extraordinary this fine day? This is an answering advice from Moscow person. Hello. Dude, what can I do for you, John? Oh, you're welcome. Say, I'm on a video conference right now. Oh, no worry. They're all laughing at the spiel I just gave you.
We're always impressed by his breath control.
No, I don't think they have. Oh, anyway, I'll talk to you later, John. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
I hope you have caller ID and you don't do that for everybody. Like if it's your wife or something.
You know, I don't have caller ID, and I do that.
Everybody gets that, huh?
Oh, it's so funny. Before we started doing our lunchtime conversations on Skype and FaceTime, I used to let him do the whole thing and then critique him on how he was able to do it in one breath this time.
Oh man.
There's a story behind the spiel. You want to hear it?
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to ask you. Is like how how does that happen?
Early in my career, it was like I think within the second or third year of my career, I'm in Ballard, which is a small suburb of Seattle, and I happen to have a client. I always worked out of my home, so I had a home office that even then, and I happened to have a client in with me. And the phone rang and said, "Hey, do you mind if I take this?" He said, "No, go right ahead." And I picked up the phone and I go, "What?" And then I talk on the line and hang up. And he goes, "My God, this is." I said, "What?" I said, "You are the rudest person I've ever heard on the phone. Is that how you answer the phone? You just go, what? You don't say hello? It's so crass. It's vulgar. And I what? I should be bubbly, effervescent, and a joy to listen to when people call?" I said, "Yes." And then right then the phone rang, and I pointed to the phone, and he nodded vigorously. I took a deep breath, and that whole spiel just popped out of me. And my client was laughing, and the guy on the other end of the phone was laughing. And my client says, "Okay, $50. I said, $50 what? I'm going to bet you $50. I'm going to call you sometime this week. And if I hear you do the spiel when I call, you get $50. So I said, "Okay, hang on. I got to write this thing down." And I said, "So this is the," he says, "Yeah, that's the spiel." I went, "Oh, okay, that's my spiel." And so for the next few days, whenever the phone rang, I wanted $50. You know, this was the late '80s, early '90s. You know, $50 actually did something back then. And
is good.
About 3 days later, he calls, and sure enough, he says, "No, $50 is yours." And but by then, I got so used to it, I never stopped. I found that it turned out to be a very useful tool in that I take control of the conversation. When people call me, it's that's a big factor. Suddenly, I'm in charge of the conversation, not them. It disarms them. They find it funny. They find it entertaining. And then on top of that, it has the added benefit of if it's a telemarketer, they typically hang up. And I would say that 75% of the calls anymore, because the only people who call me on that home line are telemarketers. So
it's just telemarketing deterrence at this point.
That, and I did. Oh, also, I had this one client. He kept calling. He would call me, listen to the spiel, and hang up. Call me again, listen to the spiel, and hang up. Call me again, listen to the spiel, and keep doing this to see if I would get winded.
Ooh,
eventually, he started laughing.
That's giving me ideas.
I'm cruel, you know. So.
Did he not like you, Mark? What was going on there? that is just very odd. Well, I feel it's safe to say I'm never going to try to do that. Maybe I will one day. I don't know. We'll pick a day out of the year, but I just don't think I could do it even like a sentence before I start laughing, and just I'm going to make it through it.
There, I think I got the line work done on this baby. What do you think? as far as...
Okay, say something, Bill.
Something, Bill. Maybe he needs to be lankier, but other than that, I'm mostly pleased.
The only problem I have with it is the lack of line control as far as thick lines and thinner lines. There doesn't seem to be any reason or difference by why one's thick and one's thinner.
Okay.
For example, I think thick lines as an outline works well, but thick lines within, like say on his arm.
Okay.
Then I was noticing, sort of like, remember that illustration we were looking at the other day where you fixed the finger because one of the fingers was really thick?
Among other things, yes.
So if you create a thick outline against the hand that's in the background, I think that would work and kind of even out all the other heavy lines that you have going around the outside of the figure.
Okay.
So as for the figure itself, I think it looks fine.
I think for me, the thing that popped out is the right hand looks like you put more work into it than the left hand.
Yeah, I admit that is in the case. I can. Oops. Speaking of making that mistake with the thumb again. Yeah, that was the worst thing was it wasn't just that it was, when I put it on my Facebook page, a colleague of mine decided to say exactly what she thought the thumb looked like. And I'm going, Elizabeth, this is my business page. That's like a bad Yelp review.
Yeah.
Have you taken the comments off your business page yet?
I haven't figured out how yet. Is that what you meant, Mark? Let's see.
Yeah, but you still have some interior lines that are too thick, like over on the knuckles. And now the hand in the foreground, the creature's right hand, lacks the thicker outline on the outside of it.
Okay.
Also, the creature's its right foot on the left-hand side of the page, the bottom of the shoe has nothing but thin lines and no thick line underneath it.
Okay.
So I think once you get your thick and thin lines in the right areas, it'll look just fine.
Yeah, there's your cough. I was about to say I didn't hear it once.
As I said, it's mostly better, but I mean, at least I don't feel sick anymore. But it's stubborn. There.
So, Bill, mention real quickly what you're going to be doing this Friday.
I am going to the Creativity Summit in Portland, Oregon. And I'll be, and it's going to be a pretty interesting thing. I haven't heard about it, but I don't know exactly what to expect, but I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, the biggest thing I'm looking forward to about it is it's being funded by Leica, and so I'm hoping to get the opportunity to talk to some of their people.
Well, what company is it?
Leica.
Geez, should I know this?
Yes,
I feel like
they're an animation studio. Previously, they were the Will Vinton studio before they got bought out. Now they're best known for Coraline.
I know them. Yeah, that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
So are they just meeting with artists, or what are they going to be doing at this conference?
They're just a sponsor, right?
Yeah, they're the sponsor, so I assume they have people there. At least I hope so. Because that would be really cool to, because they're definitely on my list of dream jobs as far as design work and storyboarding and whatnot. And they have yet to do something I have not been impressed by. I mean, at the moment, it's a toss-up whether Coraline or Paranorman is my favorite, but the other ones are just technically amazing.
Yeah, I remember watching, is it Kubo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one just blew my mind that it was all stop motion.
Oh, isn't it amazing? It looks to the untrained eye, it looks like CGI. It's so...
Yeah, well, at the end on the credits, they showed like that massive rig that they did for that skeletal monster with the swords in its head.
Yeah.
And that just, I mean, it kind of put everything in perspective as far as like how huge their production was. So, yeah, I can only imagine what Paranorman and Coraline all look like and all that. I haven't seen
when you look at the size of their, I mean, and when you look at the size of their sets, I mean, some of their town scenes have about the floor space of my apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool that they're keeping stop motion alive. I mean, they're not the only ones, though, right?
I'm sure there's others. The only one I'm really familiar with, not counting some of the studios that just do commercial work, the only one I really know about in depth is Aardman, and they pretty much go back and forth between that and CGI these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would very much like to see cell animation, at least for feature stuff, make a comeback, but at the moment, the powers that be seem to insist that it's dead.
Well, I think it's just a matter of the practicality. I mean, it's probably more what's the word, of a fiduciary decision than anything else.
Yeah. But sometimes what a lot of these studios consider successful is almost annoying. For example, Disney pretty much put the plug on their animation studio, not because they were failing, but because they weren't that everything they cranked out was a blockbuster.
Yeah, it wasn't until the guys from Pixar took them over that they started making amazing films again. Yeah, have either of you read Creativity Inc.?
I know of it. I have not read it.
It is a really, really great book. I can't recommend it enough. But especially for for anyone thinking about like running a creative business, it's just like a nice way to look at the way you should do things. And I think any business would probably benefit from it, to be honest.
It's rather interesting. I remember reading a fascinating, back when Pixar, before Disney bought Pixar, and it looked like Pixar was really giving them the run for the money as far as the business was concerned, where they were made the fascinating point about almost the paradox of the business of creativity, where obviously in most businesses the philosophy is of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But in a creative business, that philosophy only goes so far, because if you don't watch yourself, following that philosophy is pretty much makes you go stale fast. And Disney was suffering from that bad.
Is that did I hear the 5:30 alarm or whatever?
Yes, you did.
All right.
So anyway, there we go. Finished for now.
I want to thank everyone for joining and watching yet another episode of Epic Sketch Time. We will be this Epic Sketch Time is typically at 4:30 Pacific Standard Time on Mondays. If you'd like to join us and be part of our conversation, go to either our Facebook page or our Google group. And our best way is to contact me directly at Mark Monlux via Twitter, or you can reach me at markmonlux@comcast.net. Please send me your Gmail address, and I'll be sure to invite you in so that you can sketch with the rest of us. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ian. I'll see you next week.
You have a good one.
See you guys.